Okay, welcome back. So let's just look at your notes here and see if we can then develop them a little bit further. So I think that in terms of the allegory, the Cratchits are really important. They become a manifestation of really the invisible poor, those who may be working hard like Bob Cratchit, but who go unnoticed by their wealthy employers. We see the Cratchit family as really embodying the values of love, of happiness, and showing that money cannot buy happiness. That's certainly not Dickens' message here. Scrooge, for all his wealth and greed, is a lonely, isolated and miserable man. Tiny Tim, we see childhood innocence and again the real suffering of the poor. And through these characters, Dickens highlights the way in which poverty is easily ignored by the rich in their pursuit of money. Can you add to your notes now, please? Okay, so our next step is to explore the preface of the novel. So a preface is an introduction to a book, normally stating its subject or its aims. And this one really nicely sets out some of Dickens' intentions. So we'll read it first and then we'll explore. He says, "I have endeavoured in this ghostly little book to raise the ghost of an idea, which shall not put my readers out of humour with themselves, with each other, with the season, or with me. May it haunt their houses pleasantly, and no one wish to lay it. Their faithful friend and servant, C.D. Charles Dickens." Okay, so I've given you a sheet which hopefully you have got, which means you can explore this in a bit more detail. I want you to look at some of the highlighted ideas, to make some notes around the key questions. So what do you think is meant by the ghost of an idea? What does Dickens mean when he says that he hopes that it will not put people out of humour with themselves? What might be the effect of the word haunt? He says he wants it to haunt people's houses pleasantly. And finally, why do you think he describes himself as a servant to the reader? What job is it that he is intending to do? So pause the video here and add some annotations around each question on your page. Okay, so let's start then with the ghost of an idea. In fact, Dickens really emphasises the supernatural throughout this. We have the lexical field, if you like, a semantic field of the supernatural, the idea of a ghost mentioned more than once, the idea of it haunting people. So he's setting up really the genre, the type of text this is. We know it's a ghost story, but it's not one that's designed to be terrifying or scary. It says he tries to present it as a little ghost of an idea. So something that is kind of insubstantial, it's harmless. He's just putting an idea out there. He doesn't want it to put readers out of humour with themselves. Perhaps he doesn't want to scare them. But also he's saying, he doesn't want them to be too critical, perhaps, of themselves or of each other or of me. He doesn't want them to dismiss the ideas in the book. He does want it to haunt their houses pleasantly. So the sense that he wants this to be something that stays around, that lasts. If it's like a ghost of an idea, it's going to be something that is there, something that's perhaps there in the background. Not intended to be frightening, as he says, it's to haunt the houses pleasantly, but to bring about perhaps some significant ideas that he wants them to think about. And he says no one wished to lay it. I mean, to lay something meaning to put it away. So nobody wants to put this story away. But it also has a bit more significance in the supernatural terms. If we were to kind of put away a ghost, to lay it would be to sort of exorcise it, to get rid of it. So he's kind of playing around with the idea of the supernatural again there. So all of this sets up quite a light-hearted kind of a tone as he goes into the text. But he does think of himself as the reader's faithful friend and servant. So perhaps the idea of a servant suggests he has a job to do, that he has a message to deliver, something to give them maybe something they want or need. And that bit can be important to us understanding this as a didactic story with an intention to teach, and an allegory with a hidden or deeper meaning. So we're now going to put into practice another one of our note-taking skills, and this is paraphrasing. So when we paraphrase something, we shorten it down and we put it into our own words. So we're going to take the preface and our notes on that, and we're going to transform it into our own summary by paraphrasing. I've started this for you so you can use the outline of mine, or you may like to redraft it in your own words. So pause the video and have a go at rewriting the preface in your own words now. Good. That leads us now to a Hinge question, where we start to think about what we've learned so far and our own understanding. So here you have 4 options, each of which could describe the novel. So I want you to think about which one fits with what you know of the text so far, and which one you think is the most valid in showing Dickens' intentions as a writer. So was it that Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol because he was interested in the supernatural? Was it that Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol to expose inequality in Victorian society and argue for change? Was it that Dickens wrote A Christmas Carol as an allegory, using the character of Scrooge to explore social and political inequality? Or did Dickens write A Christmas Carol to present his view that the poor were really responsible for their own suffering? Pause the video and write down the statement that you think best fits your understanding of the text so far. Okay, so I would suggest that this one here, that he wrote A Christmas Carol to show that the poor were responsible for their own suffering, is the one that is incorrect. Really, this isn't the idea behind the novel at all, and hopefully is not what you've gone for. That would be a misconception. We could say that Dickens wrote this because he was interested in the supernatural. Well, I know from my background knowledge of Charles Dickens as a writer that yes, he was interested in the supernatural, and we know that he was writing a ghost story. But again, that doesn't really link to any of the context or understanding of the text that we've explored. This one here, A Christmas Carol to expose inequality in society and argue for change. Yeah, absolutely. This could be a totally valid response. We know that that was his intention and what he wanted to achieve. Even better if you've gone for this one, where we can see we're using some of that literary terminology, the Carol as an allegory and Scrooge to explore ideas of inequality. This one, I think, best really summarises what we know so far. Okay, short task for you to complete then, that is to convert some of these sentence fragments into full sentences. A sentence fragment, remember, is only part of a sentence. It's not a full sentence because it doesn't contain a subject, a verb and an object. So wrote A Christmas Carol doesn't make sense on its own. So you could add information to that fragment either side. Before, we might say who wrote A Christmas Carol, and after, we might say when they wrote the novel. We could say that it was produced at a time when. What do we know about the context, the background to this story that helps us to understand it? Look at our characters. Who or what is a manifestation of what else? What are the bigger meanings? And we know the text is an allegory, so put it into a sentence. A Christmas Carol is an allegory, and what ideas does it explore? Pause the video and complete your sentence task now. Okay, it might be a good idea at this point to hear some of each other's work. Maybe have a few of you read aloud, share your sentences and compare them, and work through to check that you have got an example for 1 through to 4. Okay, so that leaves us to our exit task. Your final activity today is to draw on your knowledge from the last 2 lessons. I'd like you to show your understanding of that within one sentence structure. We're going to use the first part of the sentence, written at a time when, to show understanding of the context of the story, what was happening in Dickens' life, or during the Victorian period and in society. Finally, why did Dickens write A Christmas Carol? Thinking about what we know of the text as an allegory, what ideas are represented through the characters of Scrooge and the Cratchits. Pause the video, complete that task, and I look forward to seeing you all once I'm back in the classroom.